How did you get into Touhou? This was the question that Reddit user u/maxdefulch asked as they began their massive post that labeled each of the fan-made Touhou anime projects that currently existed at the time. The very same post that was the inspiration for this video. You see, a year ago in summer of 2022, I took a dive into the Touhou franchise after twiddling my thumbs for years only knowing of its existence. Why would I do such a horrible thing, you may ask? I don't know, man. Curiosity gets the best of us. My first exposure to Touhou was likely the song Tear Rain by Cymix featuring Emi. It's one of the default songs in the ever-popular rhythm game Osu. Tear Rain was by far my favorite default song, but all I could ever think while playing it was, what anime are these two girls from? Oh, silly, naive, idiotic, dumb, stupid Nyaanachi. Not everything is an anime, you dunce. As it turns out, these two girls, Marisa and Reimu, were from a video game series called the Touhou Project, and even 14-year-old me could not escape the clutches of its fandom. That's because Tear Rain was not an official song. Rather, it was fan-made by a Touhou circle called Amaterasu Records, and remixed further by Cymix. Did I know this as a child? No, I just thought these girls were cute. It wouldn't be until 2022 that my motivation to indulge in the Touhou project would peak. That's right, ladies and incels, I bought a Fumo. I only vaguely knew who this Romelia Scarlet chick was, but refreshing AmiAmi's website for pre-orders got the best of me when I was finally able to get one Fumo in my cart. So, with the plushie on the way, I decided it was time to pick up a Touhou game. Which one did I choose? Touhou 18 Unconnected Marketeers. But only briefly. My official full investment into Touhou would end up being the embodiment of Scarlet Devil, the bread and butter of the Touhou project. Which only meant one thing: I was officially no longer a fan. You see, it's widely known that Touhou fans don't actually play the Touhou games because normal mode is too much for their lore-filled brains. I also couldn't be a fan. I didn't want to get mixed up with the crew that obsessed over the wrong character tune being whistled while I unboxed my Fumo. No, seriously, I got about a comment a day telling me that I had whistled Flandre's tune instead of Romelia's, which was something I already knew. It was literally just stuck in my head. But deep down I knew that if the Touhou fans in my comment section were antsy enough to overcorrect me on a minute detail, they were certainly prolific enough to make an excess of content based off of the franchise. While it's likely that those who clicked on this video are already Touhou fans, let me drop some patchouli knowledge on your ass anyway. There are 19 plus mainline Touhou games with a few official music collections, soundtracks, books, and manga. Outside of those official works, there is a dedicated fanbase with the talent to topple continents with their might, but instead dedicate their efforts towards creating their own works based off of Touhou lore. These groups are known as doujin circles, and their works are called doujinshi or doujin. And I know what you're thinking. Nyaanachi, aren't doujinshi hentai works? But to that I say, oh silly, naive, idiotic, dumb, stupid audience, not everything is a hentai, you dunce. According to the internet, doujinshi is defined as any type of self-published print work like magazines, manga, and novels, although I'd argue that it applies to any form of self-published works including anime and music. Doujin is defined as a group that shares a similar interest, activity, or hobby. Typically referred to as doujin circles, these groups will publish doujinshi based off of the intellectual properties that they share an interest in, so long as they have the rights to do so. Doujinshi works created by these circles are called doujin, usually with the work behind the name like doujin music and doujin manga. So in a sense, the terms doujinshi and doujin are pretty interchangeable. For the sake of this video though, I'll be using the term doujin to talk about the specific works, and doujin circle, or just circle, to talk about the groups behind the works. So why is doujinshi usually viewed as erotic in nature? It's a misconception based on the fact that many doujin works are indeed hentai. Without restriction to the type of work/content within the work, many doujinshi are published as hentai, but the term does not exclusively apply to erotic material, so you can put away the lotion because what I'm about to cover is anything but wankable. Now with that out of the way, I can explain what I was getting at before having to clear this up. The Touhou project is so huge and so loved that the sheer amount of fan-made content vastly exceeds the official content, to the point that fanon and canon need exorbitant amounts of separation. Music, animations, video games, manga, novels, and hell, even card games exist for this franchise that Zun himself had no part in. For crying out loud, even Bad Apple isn't official. As much as I love the official Touhou games, at this point the Touhou fanbase is the real heart of the franchise. Not that it's ever close to dying, but they're definitely the ones keeping it alive. I know that I joked about not wanting to affiliate with this fanbase, but I truly admire how much hard work they put into pumping out an endless stream of creative content. However, if you've been at all paying attention to the beginning of this video, you'll notice that something about this situation isn't quite right. Companies like Nintendo send cease and desist notices to small groups when they so much as even breathe in preparation for the word fan game. And it isn't just Nintendo. Most fan bases don't have the privilege of infinite creative freedom without stomping over some large copyright law. So what makes Touhou different? Well, I first thought that Touhou had a lack of copyright or a different type of law that applied to the franchise, but I was largely mistaken. Team Shanghai Alice, which solely consists of Zun, the Touhou Project creator, does indeed have copyright to their own franchise. It just turns out that Zun has incredibly loose restrictions on his intellectual property to the point where it's nearly the Wild West when it comes to Touhou Doujin works. The guidelines for which a Touhou fan creation needs to follow aren't too difficult to understand and implement, so we end up with a plethora of works because of them. Zun has updated his guidelines multiple times from 2011 to 2021, and it's a pretty quick read if you have the time. Since sections of the guidelines are important to this video, I'll boil it down to a few bullet points so you get a good idea of what you need to know. Number 1. Team Shanghai Alice needs to be attributed with the work clearly stating that it's based off of the Touhou Project. Number 2. Do not mistake the names of games and characters, i.e. don't confuse people. Number 3. Do not publish anything that would slander Touhou's reputation, like false rumors. Number 4. Do not publish something with unlawful sexual content or that promotes hatred against a particular group of people. And lastly, the most important for this video, number 5. For the commercial production of derivative material or the mass circulation of derivative material outside of doujin shops, you must seek my, Zun's, permission. There are a lot more guidelines, but these are the big hitters. There won't be a pop quiz or anything like that in this video, just know that for the official commercial production of anything, Zun has to give his permission. It's also interesting to note that Zun has been particular about game screenshots, and although he allows Let's Play material, he does not authorize anyone uploading the ending of his games, which is likely the most broken guideline to date considering how many people have trouble getting to the ending to see it themselves. At one point, Zun also released a rule that restricted the production of 2D animation regardless of whether it was commercial or independent, but he later commented that he had changed the guideline to only restrict commercial works. Needless to say, you wouldn't be watching this video if he had cracked down on animation. But the main comment of Zun's that solely fuels this video is the saddest part of the whole guidelines. When asked a question along the lines of an official Touhou anime production, this is what Zun had to say. I've been asked this question a lot, but I've never been officially involved in an anime production before, and I'm not planning on it. Not like I have the time. So let me enlighten you to the scenario that Touhou Project faces in regards to anime productions. For studios to create official commercial anime productions, they need Zun's permission. Zun is unlikely to provide permission to a commercial product that he has no involvement in, and Zun has no plans to be involved in an official Touhou anime production. This has, and always will be, the devastating reality when it comes to Touhou and anime. But, believe it or not, there's still a glimmer of hope for the 14-year-old me who inaccurately recognized Reimu and Marisa as anime characters, because this unfortunate conundrum has created the perfect scenario for the fans to step in and do what they do best. Create some of the most outstanding doujin anime I've ever seen. As we all should know by now, creating an anime is no simple feat. For a studio to get a license, work the staff, and produce something of quality takes time, dedication, and funding. Making anime as a studio is one thing, doing it independently is another. The scenario is frustratingly worse for doujin circles more so than independent animators and independent studios as well, because the cons drastically outweigh the pros. An independent animator that creates their own IP can strike it big and potentially go commercial, while doujin circles are forced to sell under guidelines and by no means own the IP they're using. Again, Zun's guidelines are loose, but you can't tell me that it's not discouraging to put so much effort into something only for it to be seen by a particular handful of people. This goes for fan games, fan music, fan manga, and anything that spawns from a fan base. The single reason that we have any of the fan content that we do for the Touhou Project is because doujin circles make it strictly out of love for the franchise. But not only are fan works created out of love, they're also funded out of pocket, which is why anime is the least likely candidate for any sort of fan production. When I investigated u/Max DeFolsch's Reddit post on Touhou Anime Doujins both this year and last, I found that not much had changed since the post was made in 2017. A handful of productions from 2017 were cancelled, others got new episodes, and there was new information on the still active circles. But to my knowledge, there hasn't been a single scrap of anime promised by a new doujin circle since the list was created in 2017. Leaving me with less investigative work to do, but at the same time, major disappointment. Many of these works were fresh in 2017 and still expected to debut in the near future, but now, not so much. In total, there are 3 Touhou Doujin Anime that have actually released, 3 that were promised but have seemingly been abandoned, and 1 that defied the odds by nearly breaking Zun's guidelines, and is also lost media. The 3 completed works are Memories of Phantasm, A Summer Day's Dream, and the sealed Esoteric History. While my turnout could have been a lot better in a parallel universe, 3 anime is still an impressive amount for fans to create. I'm not exactly sure why I decided to look for Touhou anime in the first place, but much like the user that crafted this post, I'm an anime fan first. Naturally, it was inevitable that I become curious about what anime the fans were capable of creating. So here's how the video will be structured. I'm going to cover everything on u/maxdefolsch's list. However, I will by no means be copying and pasting their post into a video format. This project serves as a means to uncover extra information, cover each anime in depth, give my thoughts, try to dissect what happened to the cancelled works, and most importantly, update a 6-year-old post. So while the Reddit post served as a starting point, my own research has far exceeded the skeleton structure of the initial post. I will also not be covering everything in the same order. I will first cover the most infamous work that is now lost media. I will then cover each of the 3 fully completed anime doujins with incomplete ones in between. Before covering the last completed project, I will do a lightning round on any smaller projects I find interesting. This will be similar to what u/maxdefolsch did on his list, but these will be picks chosen specifically by me. The order of coverage is Anime-esc x Touhou Project, Memories of Phantasm, Touhou Hakureisou, Meteors of Triple Dimension, The Sealed Esoteric History, Danmaku Animated Series, Anime-esc Lightning Round, and last but not least, A Summer Day's Dream. I will include timestamps in the description, so if you happen to only be interested in the completed works or you're just interested in a specific one, feel free to skip around. Without further ado, let's kick things off with the only section of the video you need to understand Zun's guidelines for: Ufotable's infamous Anime-esc x Touhou Project. Believe it or not, it's a pretty common problem for people who know nothing about Touhou to automatically assume that it's an anime. I mean, come on, look at these character designs. Sorry, these character designs. This problem is only made worse when you try to explain to your knowledgeable friend that it's actually a video game and why Touhou doesn't have an anime. Then, to one-up you of course, your incoherent friend searches Touhou anime on Google and pulls up this: the My Anime List page for Anime-esc x Touhou Project. Without digging any further, they call you a cuck, and you're still utterly hopeless trying to get them to understand a simple concept. Instead of pestering your friend more, you move on with your day like an adult, still upset that you'll never be able to watch this quote-unquote official production. While this scenario is pretty far-fetched, it demonstrates the unfortunate reality of this project. Touhou has never had an official anime. Yet, when you search on Google for Touhou anime, the first result you find is a 1-episode OVA created by a commercial anime studio. Even worse than that, you can't even watch it. So what gives? Was I lying to you? Will there actually be an official Touhou anime? No, just hold your horses, buckaroo. Let me get to the meat of this situation. Anime-esc x Touhou Project was a 1-episode OVA released by Ufotable in 2010. Yes, the very same Ufotable that loves committing tax fraud to make Mugen Train look heavenly. The OVA was a crossover between the Animate Ltd mascot Anime-esc and the Touhou Project. Animate Ltd being the largest anime retailer in Japan, and Touhou Project being Touhou Project. It was meant to celebrate Anime-ec's 10th anniversary and was supposed to screen at Anime Ichiyoshi Bishoujo Anime Matsuri, a festival hosted by Animate. So since Ufotable is a large animation studio and Zun said that they need his permission for commercial distribution, Zun must have been involved in this project, right? Oh dear viewer, I wish it were that simple. As far as the story of distribution and lost media goes, this anime isn't too hard to explain. But as soon as you start to dig into the legal complications and why a DVD has never surfaced, it becomes a lot harder to find a concrete answer. Let's start off with the basics of this story, and then I'll dig into my interpretation of how the anime plays into Zun's guidelines. To my knowledge, Ufotable released this anime, not at the planned festival, but instead at Ufotable Cafe as a private screening on November 20th, 2010. According to the internet, Ufotable cafes are permanent cafes in some major Japanese cities that do lotteries for reservations. The anime was screened again at multiple Ufotable locations from November 23rd, 2010 to December 25th, 2010. Apparently there was a card set announced too, but that may have been a misconception about these coasters that were given out to people who indulged in cafe cuisine at the time of screening. In late December of 2010, it was announced that the OVA would have a DVD release on January 7th, 2011, exclusively through Animate's website. But neither the DVD or production have surfaced online since then. While a promo for the DVD exists, it may actually have never been sold. In 2015, a worker from Animate and Ufotable named Koyama confirmed a re-release of the DVD and screenings of the OVA in select cinemas across Japan. But again, no cam footage or rip of a DVD exist, even though this supposedly happened. All we have is hearsay from those who said they saw the OVA when it was in cinemas or when Ufotable screened it at some of their events, which by some accounts was known to happen. The most concrete pieces of the puzzle that we actually have are official screenshots from the anime provided by Animate and the studio, the preview video for the OVA, and the entire storyboard uploaded to Bilibili by a user in 2020. The reason there's no camera rips of anime Tenchou x Touhou Project likely has to do with the supposed tight security at the first private screening. But theaters and all the other screenings? I mean, come on, someone had to have whipped a camera out. Ufotable's website actually does list the anime in their 2010 works, so by no means are they trying to hide what they created. But outside of the Ufotable Cafe screenings, it's just a mystery in regards to how it was ever distributed. The screenshots left show iconic characters like Reimu, Marisa, and most of the Scarlet Devil crew. Obviously there are images with anime Tenchou in them too, mainly this one of him being confronted by Flan. The trailer is the only piece of animation we have left, and it isn't very revealing. Obviously it's Ufotable, so the animation is nice, but the only Touhou shots are insanely short clips of different character fight scenes. Then there's the full storyboard, which is cool and all, but I'm gonna be honest, it's too hard for me to discern anything that happens in it. There's this one part where Marisa picks up anime Tenchou on her broomstick, but the rest of it is just mostly sloppily drawn fights. I mean, it's a storyboard for crying out loud, that's what they all look like. I do wish we had proper scans rather than a poor quality video, but you get what you get when it comes to partially found lost media. So now we're at the part of the scenario that just baffles the hell out of me. We know so much information in regards to distribution and screenings, yet have never found a trace of the anime online. If the DVDs were sold twice and cinemas held screenings, why don't we have any new footage? To understand this, you have to take a step back and realize that the internet may not have the most accurate information. Based on what we have to go off of, I came up with the most likely outcome for the anime Tenchou x Touhou Project anime. Let's start at screenings and distribution. Ufotable cafes were really the only large-scale screenings documented on Animate's website, while others seem to be harder to find. One cinema screening I found from 2012 seems to be, surprise surprise, held by Ufotable themselves. And if they kept up security at every one of their events, camera rips probably never happened. Then there's the DVD, which only ever had an official announcement, so until we see one pop up on an auction site, it's pretty safe to assume that it was never actually sold. If the DVD never sold, and screenings were only ever held by Ufotable and Animate, the reality of this lost anime can become a lot more feasible. This is because, believe it or not, this wouldn't break Zun's guidelines. Well, kind of. The missing piece of the puzzle stems from a tweet that Zun posted on September 24th, 2010 in response to being caught off guard by the announcement of this anime project. But I couldn't make sense of parts of it with what the tweet said when translated to English. While Google's poorly translated version of this tweet caught me off guard, I didn't want to give up on this piece of potentially crucial information. So I relied on Touhou fans to do what they do best and asked in the language section of the Touhou Project Discord server for a proper translation. Within moments, a friendly user had given me information I needed on the translation of Zun's crucial tweet. Here's roughly what it says. Since there are many inquiries, Animate's animation is a derivative work of Animate. The same as with derivative works made by others, they are making it on their own under the condition that they will only show it at their company's events. I am not involved in the production at all, so please contact Animate for any inquiries regarding the content. What can be garnered from this tweet clears up a lot of issues I found when looking into this lost anime. Firstly, Zun claims that he has no involvement. Secondly, and lastly, while we don't know for sure whether Animate reached out for Zun's permission, we do know that they had it in some regard. He specifically states that it is the same as with derivative works made by others, meaning he will treat it as any other doujin work even though it is being made by a commercial studio. This is because it's under the condition that they will only show it at their company's events. So, with retroactive pseudo-permission, Ufotable and Animate technically weren't stepping out of line by screening the anime at Ufotable events. What would have been stepping out of line was the supposed commercial distribution of DVDs through Animate's store. Once the product becomes commercial with distribution, there is no doubt that it breaks one of Zun's guidelines and therefore breaks his copyright. And I'm not a lawyer or anything, but selling DVDs and private screenings are pretty separate things. At this point, after none of the OVA has surfaced online, it's more far-fetched for me to believe that the DVDs ever actually sold than it is for me to believe that they were cancelled before distribution. It's highly likely that Ufotable and Anime knew they had narrowly missed stepping out of line with Zun, and didn't want to risk legal trouble by commercially distributing a DVD of their Touhou Doujin. So now we're left in a state of limbo where the anime was allowed to exist in its own Ufotable bubble but can never be distributed for outsiders to see. However, take all this information at face value because we don't know for sure whether DVDs were distributed or not. Part of me is still hopeful that we'll one day see a rip of anime Tenchou x Touhou Project online, but if it never happens, that's the way it's meant to be. One thing is certain though. Zun's unfortunate words still echo in my head. I've never been officially involved in an anime production before, and I'm not planning on it. Not like I have the time. With all hopes of an official Touhou anime thoroughly crushed, I now have you on board to experience the wonderful world of fan creations. Let's start with the one that you're the most likely to have already seen clips from. Touhou Fantasy Kaleidoscope Memories of Phantasm, or just Memories of Phantasm for short, is undoubtedly the largest Touhou Anime Doujin to date. Spanning 18 episodes, this anime is a mostly faithful retelling of Touhou 6 through 10. The show was created by Monpuku Jinja, an independent animation studio, or circle if you'd rather call it that. The group has been releasing each episode via DVD at Comiket and other conventions since August of 2011. They have since re-released Blu-ray bundles of 4 episodes each, selling them in select stores and via mail order. Don't quote me on this though, because Google Translate only does so much for Japanese websites. It seems that a complete Blu-ray version of all 17 episodes, plus an original 18th episode, has been released back in May of this year, but the internet has yet to see the new episode. Upon its initial release, there was no dub of the anime at all. Mouths moved with no voices, requiring viewers to read the provided Japanese subtitles. Even so, the incredibly dedicated Touhou fan community gave Memories of Phantasm a much-needed fan dub within time. On a side note, this is one of the best examples of the lengths that the Touhou community will go for the franchise. If they want to see an anime have proper voice acting, they'll just do it themselves. That kind of commitment is just fascinating because it isn't something you see all too often in any fandom. Memories of Phantasm starts with one episode covering Perfect Cherry Blossom, circles back to cover Embodiment of Scarlet Devil in 3, and then covers Touhou 9, 8, and 10 in that order. There's also a Chirno episode sandwiched between 9 and 8, so that's pretty cute. However, it isn't an exact copy of the games. Memories of Phantasm brings enough style and substance to the table to stand on its own. But I know you guys want to hear my opinion on the show before deciding whether to watch it, so I'll throw in my own 2 cents. To put it simply, the show is fine. By all means, this production is nothing to shake a stick at. Back when I watched the first 8 or so episodes last year, I was thoroughly enjoying it. However, this time around I noticed that the show begins to lack in certain departments as you continue watching it. Memories of Phantasm is good, don't get me wrong, but it just feels more rushed as you get into Imperishable Night and Mountain of Faith, which is incredibly ironic considering that those 2 sections of the show alone cover 10 of the 17 episodes. But that irony starts to dissipate when you realize that the episodes go from 16 minutes in length to 10 minutes in length after Scarlet Devil. And that's not even including like 3.5 minutes of opening and ending sequences. While rushed is the best way to describe Memories of Phantasm, the content itself is nice for what it is. Overall, the positives topple the negatives, and it's one to consider watching for die-hard Touhou fans. So, let's start with the positives. The character designs are very clean. They're a lot closer to fanon designs, but let's be honest, sometimes that's the best for Zun. The animation is almost way too well done for a project directed entirely by the fan community. The first few fights are well choreographed and pretty damn impressive for lack of a better term. I'll get back to the fights though when I talk about the cons because at some point they begin to taper, but general animation quality may be the best of the 3 doujins that have actually seen the light of day. As far as sound design goes, Memories of Phantasm is decently solid. Voice acting is difficult to judge because the original work did not contain voice acting. I feel like the fan dub sounded great towards the beginning of Memories of Phantasm, with the voice work just becoming passable as the show goes on.
Yo, Reim! そこで氷の妖精を捕まえてきたぜ。ああ、いらっしゃいマリさん。ほんと妖精って油断するとどこにでも湧くんだから。何言おうが同じこと。私のルナティックレッドアイズの前ではな。
It's unclear to me as to whether there are multiple fan dubs or voices were replaced later on. All I know is that I feel like Reimu, and especially Marisa, sound different after Scarlet Devil. I'm probably just crazy though, and the seiyus are the same. Voice acting aside, the soundtrack is done tremendously well. This is one of the only doujins to exclusively use Touhou music, and it feels right at home. Musical group Yuhei Satellite provided the opening and ending songs for the show. The vocals on each track are just downright gorgeous. The vocal tracks even play during climactic scenes, really honing in on the idea that you're watching an actual anime. From what I can tell, the rest of the soundtrack is made up of completely original compositions based on existing Touhou songs. Memories of Phantasm takes the cake for likely having the best and most ambitious soundtrack of the existing anime doujins. There are tracks that mix multiple songs together, and each one is composed to match the tone of the scenes that they are used in. As for the scenes themselves, there's a mix of silly slice of life and actual action. However, characters are usually heavily animated regardless of the scene. There is a huge emphasis on character personality, which could be taken as a positive or negative depending on the person. Lively characters are normally seen as a con, but for Touhou, lively can often mean the characters lean heavily into their fanon counterparts. For example, the punchline of every Chirno scene usually centers around her stupidity, which is fine for the most part, but after a while you begin to question the inclusion of some scenes. I personally don't mind the emphasis on fanon in this particular work as much as other Touhou fans, but it sometimes leads to shots just being, how many characters can we cram in this frame, instead of actual content from the games. Where the fanon interpretations of characters shine are the scenes unrelated to in-game content, like the banquet in episode 2. Again, I appreciate it sometimes, but other times I feel like canon content should take a front seat. Speaking of canon content, my favorite aspect of the show is how it interprets the canon and twists it into an anime format. Creative liberties are hands down the strongest aspect of this anime. Memories of Phantasm follows the story of each game it covers to the point that it's faithful without being a copy-paste of the video games. Let's take Scarlet Devil for example. Instead of covering the story from just Reimu or Marisa's perspective, the anime chooses to have both of them invade the Scarlet Devil mansion. In the video game, you either choose Reimu or Marisa, and their story differs depending on the protagonist. The anime starts with Marisa invading the mansion before the red mist is even cast over Gensokyo. Reimu follows later after she notices the red mist has been cast. Marisa first encounters Flandre, then Patchouli and Remilia, while Reimu encounters Rumia, Mei Ling, and Sakuya before they join forces towards the later half of the arc. The way the anime plays this out is actually secretly incredibly clever. Not only was this structure a great way to divide the yokai interactions between the two characters, but it was also a perfect way to include Flandre into the story without rushing her appearance later on. Memories of Phantasm uses this structure to tackle each subsequent game through Mountain of Faith, and I'd say they do it pretty well, even if it has led to enough confusion that they needed to dedicate a wiki section to the differences between the anime and the video games. That being said though, I wouldn't want a one-to-one faithful adaptation. If I wanted to enjoy the original story, I would just play the damn games. All in all, I agree with most of the creative liberties that the show makes, but there's one area that I can't ignore. The battles are... how do I put this nicely? Boring as f***. Obviously, I'm exaggerating, but I seriously started losing interest towards the end of Imperishable Night. Here's the best example of what I mean. Episode 1 covers the entirety of Perfect Cherry Blossom in 16 minutes. Within those 16 minutes, some fights are cut down to place emphasis on more important ones, which is fine. That's not where my problem lies. Chen is given a cute scene of Marisa chasing her around an attic, and Alice is shown pinning Marisa to the wall with her dolls. Wow, that sounded less sexual on paper. These scenes' sole purpose is to say, hey, there was a battle. And that's it. Nothing wrong with that. They were creative ways to skip past lesser battles in favor of Yomu and Yuyuko. Skip past a couple episodes, and we're at the end of Imperishable Night. Remilia is tricked into fighting Fujiwara, Kaguya admits that she had a second agenda, and the episode closes with the cliffhanger of an intense battle. So what happens next episode, you may ask? Sakuya pulls Kaguya into the scene. Kaguya and Fujiwara fight off-screen, and all we see are the two in tattered clothing, and there isn't even a nip slip. Can you see why I'm upset? If you're going to tease a battle, have a battle. Otherwise, I'm fine with cute and simple ways to avoid the necessity of a battle. This is without a doubt my biggest complaint with the whole anime. There are more battles in the latter half of Memories of Phantasm, but most are rushed and poorly choreographed. Seriously, when you can cover Perfect Cherry Blossom better in one episode than you can cover Imperishable Night in 6, you have a problem. Negativity aside, I really do admire what the show was trying to do. If you find yourself wanting to watch Memories of Phantasm, I actually do recommend watching it. For newcomers, I'd just say watch through Scarlet Devil. The show isn't a good substitute for the games by any means. You won't enjoy the other arcs if you know nothing about Touhou lore. For die-hard fans, go ahead and watch it all. You will find enough enjoyment in the lively characters and the unique interpretation of the first 5 Windows games to deal with where the anime starts to falter. Infamy doesn't begin to describe the rabbit hole that is Touhou fan animations. Something I hadn't quite noticed until digging into this anime in particular was that people know about these works. I've come to realize that this video's perspective has more so switched from curiosity on this topic to archiving it for the future. That's because many of the animations I have and will proceed to cover have already been well loved by the Touhou community. And Touhou Hakureisou may be the pinnacle example of this phenomenon. Touhou Hakureisou is an anime project dedicated to a simple slice-of-life plot where the entire Touhou cast resides in a single apartment complex. Did I say simple? I mean complex. While the premise is simple, it quickly becomes ever so clear that this idea presents a multitude of incredible interactions between the extremely diverse cast of Gensokyo characters. Which is genius! In theory. Sorry to be the one to break the news to you, but Touhou Hakureisou never actually released. The project seems to have been scrapped, with the last mention of it being from 2016. Touhou Hakureisou is survived by its preview video, original 3-volume manga, and anime opening likely played on repeat by Gensokyo enthusiasts. So, let's take a look at what Touhou Hakureisou had to offer. Hakureisou was created by two-dimensional mirror image, a doujin circle out of the Chinese mainland. Outside of the small bits of Hakureisou content that exist, they've also released many doujin manga works and art books. Although I have been unsuccessful in finding a translated work of theirs, the few pages of manga I've seen are undeniably stunning as far as fan-made creations are concerned. Speaking of manga, Touhou Hakureisou was actually initially created as a manga going by the same name. It had 3 volumes, none of which have been translated to English obviously, but if you still want what the anime would have had to offer, you can find physical copies for sale online. 2D mirror image is still active today, but more on that in the end of this segment. To begin our anime journey, we start at the preview video first uploaded to Bilibili on the 13th of September 2016. The video is sort of stylized like a vintage cartoon, although the character designs and colors are not. While the PV isn't in black and white, the music and vintage film roll filter give it the slight vibe of slapstick cartoons. Reimu is walking down a path in Gensokyo, meeting yokai along the way, and stealing items from them that are causing disruption. Each interaction is unique and demonstrates the personality of every Gensokyo resident well, like Yugi and Suika's excessive alcoholism and Aya's propensity to take unwanted photos. It ends when Reimu finds the perfect cherry blossom gang plus Yuka Kazumi, where she enjoys some fresh watermelon. The preview shows no character sheets or information regarding the series, other than a vague date of release. Although it's just a short animation, you can already observe how well this particular doujin circle knew what they were doing with these characters. Even though this preview sits in the shadow of the anime opening, I still have an appreciation for it. However, it's very clear that this was meant to exist to show that progress was being made on the project and to actually officially announce its development. Believe it or not, the anime was published on Bilibili in June of 2016, just a couple of months prior to the PV. What I thought predated the opening was actually just the official announcement after the popularity of the opening spiked. There was actually a character sheet preview video with bits of information that predates the opening itself, but it isn't very interesting to cover because it's exactly what you'd expect. The opening, on the other hand, is very, very interesting to cover. The Touhou Hakureisou anime opening is likely my favorite anime opening covered in this video. The music, direction, character designs, and animation are all top quality. Not to mention how they nailed the personality of each yokai and human. Well, they nailed it depending on your definition of Touhou personality. As to not retread previous territory from Memories of Phantasm, I'll briefly explain what I mean. Canon and fanon Touhou characters have some overlap but are largely different. Some people love fanon while others hate it. Much like Memories of Phantasm, it's clear that Touhou Hakureisou was going to lean heavily into character fanon rather than canon. But unlike Memories of Phantasm, Hakureisou does it in the best way. Each character in the opening is given their distinct personality with tropes intact. Body language, facial expressions, and actions are on point enough to make you smirk through all the visual eye candy. Every shot is colorful, clever, and super enjoyable, not to mention the fact that it syncs perfectly with the music. Soundholic provided the song Psychedelic Onizakura Alliance for this project, and for lack of a better term, this song is a banger. On a side note, Soundholic has multiple animated videos done for their work that are worth checking out as well. While the music is pretty iconic, what stuck out to me was the sheer amount of references included in this production. That's because, on top of the insane production quality, 2D Mirror Image managed to sprinkle in a plethora of internet culture references as well. I'm not going to sit here and analyze the opening because we already have a good idea of what the anime was supposed to entail, but I will point out some of my favorite moments and references. Firstly, I really like the idea of Reimu and Sanai constantly butting heads. Sanai isn't typically portrayed in this way in much of the fanon content I've seen, but I'm all for this change, especially considering that they're competing shrine maidens. The chest bump in the beginning always cracks me up too when you realize that size is clearly an important factor in their rivalry. Some of my favorite shots from this video are the opening character barrage, the giant mecha battle, and the JoJo fight where Sakuya literally has the world. The animation is too clean in the character barrage. It also does a good job quickly establishing what each character is like. The mecha battle is over the top, and it's nice to see Sumi Reko get her moment to shine. The JoJo fight is just stupidly hilarious. Yugi is buffed up like a Part 1 JoJo, and Sakuya literally has the world, which isn't surprising considering that she is so often compared to Dio. Speaking of JoJo references, it has to be the most referenced piece of media in the opening. Satori Kameji is wearing the stone mask, there are multiple Reimu poses where she's drawn like Joseph, and the final mecha freeze frame may just be Sakuya using the world. Other general references include Hatsune Miku, Umaru, and Kyubey at the festival, Aya and Nitori in a Pokemon battle, Nitori and possibly Kanako dressed up as superheroes, and my all-time favorite, which is Yuka Kazumi having a three-peater from Plants vs. Zombies. Unsurprisingly, I've hardly mentioned a fraction of the content here because it's pretty excessive. This is a video you can loop for hours and never get bored. But this is where the information on Hakureisou sort of stops. My biggest blunder when researching any of these projects is what is actually credible enough to talk about. Because while the videos are solid proof of anime development, finding context behind them is like trying to convince Chirno she's not the strongest. i.e., it's difficult. Questions start to pop up like, since Hakureisou was a manga, was the video used to promote the manga, or was it always planned to be an anime production? And then you have to slog through websites in a language that you're wholly unfamiliar with to find some semblance of an answer. But in response to that question in particular, the answer is yes and no. According to a Touhou archive account on Facebook, the anime opening was an extra meant to promote the manga, with the formal anime coming out in the future. A disc with the opening animation seems to have been sold in a bundle with some of the comics. So while an anime was planned for production, the opening was not created with that purpose in mind. If this is all true, this post starts to clear things up for me. The opening being used for manga promotion makes the promotional video seem more necessary in retrospect. And I'm definitely taking a shot in the dark here, but maybe the Doujin Circle felt pressured to make an anime even though their only intention was to promote the manga. Regardless, this Facebook post also shared some more details that I had missed about Hakureisou. Design sheets of Reimu, Sanai, and the apartment complex itself were posted, as well as an image of what came in this particular physical release. The description of the post adds some missing plot details too, like the setting being a Gensokyo alternate universe and Reimu being the landlord for the apartment building. Which, now that I think about it, that's definitely why she keeps stealing items from characters in the PV. There's probably more information trapped behind the Doujin Circle's Weibo account, but I need an account myself to access their entire profile. And as much as I was happy to give my personal information away to a Chinese company to keep digging, the website just never sent me a verification code. So that's everything I could find on Touhou Hakureisou. Now it's time for the big question. Will this anime ever be released? Well, if we want any answer other than no, we first have to ignore the 21X release date from the PV because we're already into the 2020s. With Hopium now in the air, I'm going to give Touhou Hakureisou a 5% chance of actually happening. Although I can't find a definite answer regarding the status of Hakureisou, much of the internet seems to believe that it's been cancelled. A YouTube re-upload of the anime opening updated their description with a "the project is on indefinite hold" note as of 2020. And while I have no clue if this is reputable evidence, if it turns out to actually be on hold, then the anime still has hope. A minuscule amount of hope, but hope nonetheless. From my perspective though, it seems like 2D Mirror Image has largely moved on from this project altogether. With hype for a Gensokyo slice of life anime left in 2016, there's not much of a reason for them to follow through with this particular project. The Doujin Circle is still active, but they're probably going to continue to make more manga instead of a large-scale fan anime production. So while I'm sad that we won't be able to watch this particular production, I'm happy with what we even got out of it. I mean, just look at this video. Look at it! Who knows, maybe we can form a massive movement to scanlate the manga, because I'd sure as hell love to read it. It seems that as I gaze down the list of unreleased Touhou anime projects, my disappointment really starts to sink in. But there's always one project that sticks out like a sore thumb when it comes to disappointment. This is because the subject matter is pretty unique even when compared to the previous work discussed. What could be more unique than a slice of life where the entire Touhou cast live in one apartment complex, you may ask? Well, how about one where the anime focuses on the video games that no one talks about? Meteors of Triple Dimension is an anime project dedicated to content relating to the first 5 Touhou games released on the PC-98. Yes, the no longer canon games that not even the most dedicated players, who obviously aren't fans, want to touch with a 10-foot bamboo stalk. What I mean by dedicated to content relating to these games is that in all my digging, I still haven't figured out exactly what this anime was supposed to offer. The anime seems to mix both new and old characters into the story, and it even has 2 different character designs for Reimu, one related to her PC-98 appearance and one related to her Windows appearance. As we all know by now, it's not at all uncommon to know nothing about a specific doujin that was promised but never fulfilled. However, Meteors of Triple Dimension has a treasure trove of content to work off of for what was a supposedly cancelled project. It's just that the website is in Chinese and Google doesn't do a very good job translating anything. No need to fear though, as I will tell you everything that I know about this project based on the traces of media it left online. Touhou Meteors of Triple Dimension was an anime doujin created by the Doujin Circle, niche of perpetual motion, located in the Chinese mainland. Although the anime has never been released, it is survived by an original opening animation, preview video, and now archived website. While news hasn't surfaced for this project since mid-2016, the doujin group is actually still pretty active to this day. But more on that later. Let's indulge in the content that we do have. Starting off with the PV, we mostly get a glimpse of the characters involved in the anime and a little bit of the setting. The 55-second video is packed with quick character cards and early unfinished animatics that are later seen fully animated in the opening. It's a nice preview of what's to come, highlighting which characters will be heavily involved as well as quickly flashing ones that appear but will likely have less of a major role. Overall, there's a lot to look at here, but most of it becomes retreaded ground since the animatics become animations for the opening video. Really quickly though, some things to note. Usami Sumireko, the first president of the Secret Sealing Club, seems to be the main character. She's also given 2 designs. Mima is present, so that's neat because she's been abandoned since the PC-98 games. Yukari Yakumo is briefly shown at the end, indicating that she may be integral to the plot. Again, a lot of this is speculation and observations, so take everything I say with a grain of salt. Moving on to the opening, there's a lot more to digest in this video. The opening starts with the 2 Usamis walking towards the camera and eventually joining hands. From there, the camera pans to a rooftop where we see Heida no Akyu and Kosuzu Motori sitting and watching what I can only presume is a giant scroll flying into the sky. The logo of the anime envelops the screen before flashing a few characters at us, starting with Mima and ending with Ellen. There's a cute scene of Mima picking up a young Marisa before a grid-like world appears with Doremi's suite floating inside. Next, Yuka Kazami is shown smelling a flower as her hair grows longer. The remainder of individual character shots include Shinki, Yumemi Okazaki, Ellie, I believe, and sadly a couple others that I just don't recognize. I mean, look, my Touhou knowledge is really only good up through Mountain of Faith. I gotta leave some of the interesting Touhou knowledge for my future self to learn. The other notable shots at the end are one of Sumireko outside of her school and the 2 brief fights we see. A selfie is rapidly shown with Yumemi, Sumireko, Renko Usami, Maribel Hearn, and one character I can't identify. The camera zooms out of Sumireko's phone to show her outside of her school. In the first of the 2 fight scenes, we see old school Reimu throw a giant yin-yang orb at Yumemi, and in the last fight, Yukari collides an entire subway train with Mima's attack. Kana Anabarad is the last character shown as she turns around to face the camera. Even after looking up how to pronounce her name, I still don't understand. The opening is fairly well done, all things considered, although it doesn't do much to help us understand the subject matter of the anime any better. At this point, we've seen characters from PC-98, manga, music collections, and Windows games, ultimately confusing me even more. Confusion aside though, the opening's quality isn't half bad. The music was provided by another Chinese doujin circle called Mad Hatter T. It fits the visuals like a glove, and honestly makes me curious what other work Mad Hatter T has to offer. Speaking of visuals, the opening is paced fairly fast but gives enough time for each moment to shine on its own. Sadly, the animation is really only decent when there's a huge fight. It seems that all of the previous storyboarded scenes were given proper animation, while other parts of the opening don't even have in-betweens. Needless to say, aside from the direction and art of the opening, the visuals are sloppy. It's probably the weakest of the Touhou openings in my opinion. Hakureisou is far more impressive both in style and in expression. This one isn't bad by any means, but you can tell that it was done by a group of fans, whereas even Memories of Phantasm doesn't feel entirely like a fan project. This is wholly speculation on my end, but this opening may have been the tipping point in deciding what to do with this project. It feels rushed out in order to capture the audience that was intrigued by the initial PV, only for the creators to realize that animation is far more difficult than they could have ever imagined. Regardless of whether this is true or not, the website gives a little more insight into where the project left off. ForeverShrine.net was the home of Meteors of Triple Dimension up until about 2020. Ironic that the shrine was supposed to be forever, but has now been replaced by the shadiest betting site known to man. But that's okay, because we have the archive of it, courtesy of the Wayback Machine. The last updates to the site were back in July of 2016. I won't go over everything that this site has to offer, but I will cover a bit here and there. The big hitters are the character designs page, the settings page, and the animation process page. Original art is found on all three of these pages, and it's pretty fascinating to look through. Character design sheets include Heida no Akyu, Reimu Hakure, Sumireko Usami, Marisa as a little girl, Mima, Yumemi Okozaki, Kosuzu Motori, Shinki, and Kana Anaberal. There are a lot more sketches here full of expressions that weren't shown in the opening. The settings page shows progression of different backgrounds drawn and locations from the anime. The animation process page consists mostly of animatics that we've already seen, but this time in GIF format. Whatever the case was for this project, the website makes one thing pretty clear. All of this art was already used in the opening. Meaning? I have a hard time imagining that progress on Meteors of Triple Dimension got much further past this point of production. The only sliver of hope that we as a community can still hold on to though would be the fact that the niche of perpetual motion is still an active doujin circle. As it turns out, the anime was based off of a doujin manga initially created by this group. Several books have been published, the manga got a Chinese dub in 2020, and the circle's most recent works are 2 video games set to launch sometime in the near future, one of which already has a demo on Steam. At the end of the day, I'd give this anime about a 10% chance of ever touching sunlight, and that's being generous. Despite the lack of competency in animation, I can tell that there was a lot of passion behind this project. What makes it the most disappointing work for me is that I'm unfamiliar with the PC-98 games. Meteors of Triple Dimension would have been a pretty neat way to get me, and others like me, invested into the lore of the Touhou games that fans seem to shrug off. Maybe someday I can appreciate the Touhou canon of days gone by, but for now, let's move on to a more impressive work from a group that actually delivered on their promise. Alright, I know this section is coming hot off of the heels of 2 failed projects, but I did that for a reason. I wanted to show you that there are still projects that show incredible potential and end up following through on that potential. Touhou Hakureisou and Meteors of Triple Dimension were really neat projects but lacked the push necessary to reach their full potential. They were projects that were promised but dropped in silence, ghosting the anticipated audience in the process. But then there's Hifu Club, Activity Record, the sealed esoteric history. A project promised in 2014, fulfilled in 2015, then again in 2017, then again in 2022. A project that was given extensive update information on the Doujin Circle's website throughout its production. Regardless of how the quality of the sealed esoteric history is, the Doujin Circle responsible for it clearly cared enough to keep up the momentum on their project. It's something that I hadn't really noticed until digging into this particular work. Sure, the circle responsible for Memories of Phantasm updates their website frequently as well, but something about the way Kyoto Fantasy Troupe archives the process is pretty remarkable. I think I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, so let me back up a bit. Kyoto Fantasy Troupe is the Chinese doujin circle responsible for creating the sealed esoteric history, a Touhou doujin anime following members of the Hifu Club. This is the future Hifu Club, so it follows the lives of Renko Usami and Maribel Hearn as they investigate the history of Gensokyo. Episodes feature a mix of the lives of the 2 protagonists and the history of Gensokyo and its inhabitants. The anime was first teased by the Circle in October of 2014 and then given an opening about a month later. Episode 1, titled Moon, was released at Comiket 89 on December 29, 2015 without voice acting, and at Comiket 90 on August 12, 2016 with voice acting. Episode 2, titled Prayer, was released at Comiket 92 on August 11, 2017. And then there's Episode 3. This is where I need to preface that most of my information on the background of these projects comes from wikis. I'm sure you know by now that while wikis do have good information, sometimes they fail horrendously. While I typically double check the releases by finding videos and websites to match them online, I really didn't have to look far to realize that this page needs editing. The Touhou wiki page for the sealed esoteric history states, and I quote, "On May 29th, 2022, Kyoto Fantasy Troupe released a promotional video for the third episode titled Fate. The full episode was first released on December 31st, 2021 at Comic-Con 100? So, someone please tell me how the episode was released a year prior to the promotional video in December of 2021 at a Comic-Con that happened in fall of 2022. Yeah. So now I have to play janitor and clean up the wiki's mess. Here's what I can only presume is the case after looking into this. The promotional video was released to Bilibili on April 25th, 2022 and uploaded to YouTube on May 29th of the same year. The anime episode was released at Comic-Con 101 on December 31st, 2022. It could have been Comic-Con 100 in August, but that would predate a livestream that happened on the 27th and 28th of August, which was the first public appearance of this episode. Bizarrely, information on the third episode has been difficult to find. I found 2 uploads of it on YouTube, but none on my less than acceptable sites that require a bit of oceanic exploration. I thought that maybe it was never sold and the YouTube rips are from that one live stream back in August, but no, the DVD is up for sale online with a digital version as well. So to recap, Episode 1 released in 2015, Episode 2 released in 2017, and Episode 3 just released at the end of 2022. There were a few hiccups, like the lack of voice acting in the beginning and the lack of an instrumental audio track in the third episode, but for the most part, these episodes were a quality fan creation. Here's what each of the episodes entail. Episode 1, titled Moon, is a roughly 30-minute production covering past events on the lunar surface. Maribel and Renko discuss the moon both currently and in the past, but they take a back seat this episode as most of the action is on the moon. The first section of the episode houses scenes of the Lunarians as they deal with the now immortal Princess Kaguya. Afterwards, we get more history as the first lunar invasion held by Yukari Yakumo is fully animated. At the end of the episode, Maribel and Renko end up on the moon, although it's only a dream of Maribel's. However, the scene does tease Maribel's ability, which becomes a larger piece of the anime in Episode 3. Moving on to Episode 2, titled Prayer, is a 47-minute production, currently the longest of the 3. The episode follows Maribel and Renko as they visit the original Moriah Shrine in search of information on Sanai Kochiya. While Sanai is recorded in the book that Maribel carries around, everyone except for a select few seem to have forgotten her altogether. The girls eventually run into Yayoi Kochiya, Sanai's sister, and an original character created for this episode. The remainder of the episode consists of backstories from Yayoi's childhood growing up with Sanai. Sanai was chosen to be Shrine Maiden as she could communicate with the gods, while Yayoi couldn't. Yayoi and her got along well, but her family always treasured Sanai more. Sanai left for Gensokyo before Yayoi came back from university, and for a while, Yayoi impersonated Sanai and acted as Miko when she returned home. The whole story is emotional with ups and downs, and I can't spoil it all in a summary. The episode draws to a close as the two girls remark that Maribel's book holds accurate information and their understanding of reality is twisted. Lastly, we have Episode 3. Episode 3, titled Fate, is a roughly 35-minute production centering on a certain dream that Maribel Hearn is experiencing. Maribel is stressing her dream as she can't make sense of it. It's quite possible that what she is experiencing isn't a dream but a look into one of her ancestors' past lives. In the dream, Maribel is viewing it from the perspective of a character named the Raven. The Raven is a parentless young girl who dresses and acts like a boy. The dream centers around them and their ambitions of visiting the Scarlet Devil Mansion. Before leaving their village, they unknowingly run into Sakuya and stumble upon some connection with Yukari Yakumo. Maribel drags Renko into the dream with her to observe, and the rest of the episode plays out inside the dream. The Raven interacts with Sakuya quite a bit before heading off to the mansion. Romelia and Flandre make an appearance, with Romelia running into the Raven at the end of the episode. The last scene shows Maribel herself at a different point in time as she's welcomed into the Scarlet Devil Mansion. This episode is by far the most confusing. There seems to be a lot of foreshadowing and out-of-context scenes. It will likely become a lot clearer when Episode 4 comes out, because although there has been no official announcement, the end of the episode mentions a Part 2. But that's it for the sealed esoteric history. I know I excessively summarized the episodes, but I tried not to spoil everything too bad. There's a lot more content within the episodes that I haven't explored here. Everything seems to be based off of events that happen within the audio works that these two girls are a part of, or original content made up for the anime. I can't speak on behalf of Zun's music collection series because I haven't listened to any of them, but according to people online, there seem to be some moments from the audio works adapted into the anime. Each episode acts more like an OVA rather than an anime series, so you can watch them all as one-off experiences. This also means that the length of each work can drastically vary. Out of the 3 Touhou Anime Doujins, I'd argue that this one has the overall best quality. The art style is crisp and mimics a proper anime the best. Animation is pretty good, but nothing screams Sakuga to me. Action scenes are very well choreographed, but they take up a lot less of the anime than the ones in Memories of Phantasm. The pacing and direction of the show is executed properly too. Nothing is rushed, and the way that each scene plays into the next makes it flow surprisingly naturally. Backgrounds and settings are detailed and lively. Episode 3 in particular seems like it got a quality boost to me. Not that the episodes before it were bad, but the art, animation, setting, and overall direction of the episode nearly matches the quality of an official OVA. The sealed Esoteric History also has a pretty breathtaking sound design as well. The soundtrack is full of softer instrumental tracks that set a certain mystical tone for the episodes. I may just not be familiar with Touhou music much past Imperishable Night, but the first few episodes don't seem to use arrangements of existing Touhou songs. Rather, the arrangements are completely original for the works. My ears aren't swell at picking up familiar sounds in unfamiliar arrangements, so I could be wrong though. I did notice that episode 3 definitely mixes embodiment of Scarlet Devil music into said mystical arrangements. So it's likely that the music is a mix of original and Touhou arrangements, as Zun is credited in the soundtrack for Moon. Regardless, they're all quite beautiful pieces worthy of setting the tone for each scene. Voice acting is another piece of sound design that is just absurd for Doujin Anime. Kyoto Fantasy Troupe somehow scrounged up an all-star voice acting cast, with Hana Kanazawa playing Maribel Hearn and Eri Kitamura playing Renko Usami.
メイド？私の服を見て連想しちゃったの？
レンコ、違うよ。最近また変な夢を見るようになったの。それで寝不足気味。
前と同じ夢?
Needless to say, this Doujin anime has better voice acting than some actual official anime. However, I'd be lying to you if I told you that this Doujin had the best voice acting work of the 3. Maikaze, the creator of A Summer Day's Dream, has some backdoor into the industry and also pulled an insane cast of voice actors for their work. I'll cover this more when I get to the last of the 3 Doujin works, but for now, here are my personal thoughts on the sealed Esoteric History. I like it. It isn't my favorite of the 3 works, but it is the most well crafted when you compare them side by side. Treating each episode as an OVA of sorts is a brilliant approach. The topics explored in each episode have their own appropriate time to shine, with nothing feeling rushed. I also admire how bold Kyoto Fantasy Troupe is to have a non-traditional setting for a Touhou anime. Focusing on Maribel and Renko in their average lives rather than Reimu and Marisa in Gensokyo just feels more original and clever. In the Endslate of each episode, Reimu and Marisa even joke about not having appearances. It leaves room to highlight characters and backstories that go ignored when you look at Touhou from the perspective of its traditional protagonists. The Lunarians, Sanai, and the Scarlet Devil crew are no longer just observed as threats. Rather, they are a living, breathing part of Gensokyo history. This unique approach makes the sealed Esoteric History feel like a breath of fresh air to the anime doujin viewer. However, the caveat to this is that this particular work is the least approachable to an outsider. You need to know a decent bit of in-game lore to enjoy any of this anime. Even I am unable to fully experience this doujin because my knowledge of Maribel and Renko is severely limited. This isn't a massive issue, but just know that the sealed Esoteric History is not an appropriate way to introduce someone to Touhou. For those that are already fans, you'll really get a kick out of the care put into Kyoto Fantasy Troupe's doujin anime. My favorite of the 3 episodes would have to be the second. Mountain of Faith has all these characters that come out of nowhere to be built up as antagonists even though they already have backstories. Sanai is handed the worst treatment, just seen as a green Reimu to some fans because she's also a Miko. The sealed Esoteric History remedies this by showing where the girl came from and how her disappearance had left an impact on those around her. Fleshing out Sanai's backstory is the perfect concept for an episode because it takes a huge blunder of Zun's and uses it as an exploit for interesting content. While the episode isn't canon, it isn't so outrageous as to not fit within the Touhou universe. I have high hopes for the future of the sealed Esoteric History. Whatever may be the case with the next release, the conclusion to the story presented in episode 3 will surely be fascinating. I'll be keeping an eye on Kyoto Fantasy Troupe's website in anticipation for their upcoming works. If I had a nickel for every time a studio ghosted me on the production of a doujin anime, I'd have 2 nickels. Which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. Danmaku Animated Series is an anime about Touhou characters playing a Touhou-inspired card game simply called Danmaku. The anime was not created by a doujin circle, but rather an independent studio known as Studio Yuraki. This studio, spearheaded by Edward Kloss, has seen much popularity in recent years. Studio Uraki is known for taking freelance work for those willing to pay, leading to works such as the Oda-chan show. Even though I only saw them credited for the first 3 episodes, the Oda-chan show is where I recognized Studio Uraki from. From what I remember, the quality of the show was pretty damn good for an independent studio, so I was excited to see how their Touhou Anime from 2017 turned out. That is until I found out that their Touhou Anime from 2017 never turned out. Once again, another creator had dropped the ball and failed to continue their Doujin project. But I mean, what's new? People have their lives and aren't obligated to give us a Touhou anime that they promised over 5 years ago. What's important is the content that we have left. Danmaku animated series is survived by its Bad Apple teaser video. Its animated character sheets? Danmaku animated series is only survived by its character sheets, small animations posted to Twitter, and 1 animation process video. I framed Meteors of Triple Dimension as the most disappointing work for me, but Danmaku animated series is undeniably the most frustrating on this list. Much like with Ufotable and their Lost Media Touhou anime, Studio Uraki went silent on us. Although the big difference is that Ufotable actually made the anime, and Uraki hardly got past character designs. Studio Uraki stopped discussing the project after mid-2018 and at some point privated a multitude of videos relating to the project. It's another case of we don't know what happened as a result of dead silence from its creator. And you may be asking, Nyaanachi, why is this so frustrating to you if all the other cancelled Doujin anime creators also left us on red? It's because Studio Uraki is a studio, not an individual creator. And as a studio with a professional image, they should have the decency to tell us that something is cancelled. I'm going to preface the rest of this section with an important tidbit to keep in mind. Studio Uraki is a competent freelance studio that makes incredible work. I'm not going to undermine anything they do because I love to see creators like them succeed. I don't want anyone who watches this to see the studio in a negative light because as far as I know, they've done good work for many creators. That also means that I will be very upset if you go and harass them about this cancelled project. Just because I don't like the way that they handled the situation doesn't mean we as a community should send negativity their way.
Okay.
The purpose of discussing this is only to call them out for letting some of their fans down in what I see as an unprofessional manner. They have every right to private videos and delete posts relating to Danmaku animated series even if I don't like it. Now with that out of the way, let's start with the positives because from what we have, Danmaku animated series looked really good. The last YouTube video left on Studio Uraki's channel that relates to Touhou is a 35-second video depicting their animation process. The video demonstrates different stages of animation on a short clip of Rin Kaienbyo wagging her tail and then turning towards the camera. The sketches, line art, and full animation are really clean and smooth. With the quality that this studio put out, Danmaku could have been the best looking doujin anime we've seen. Other animations pulled from Twitter are pretty cute as well. There's this one of Lily White bumping the camera, a loop of Marisa flying on her broom, Reimu searching her hand for a particular card, and my personal favorite, Reimu begging for donations. These, aside from the private Bad Apple animation teaser, are all the animations we have left of Danmaku animated series. Aside from these, we have a multitude of character sheets. I found 19 character sheets that include Reimu Hakure, Suika Ibuki, Tenshi Hinanawi, Byakuren Hijiri, Nitori Kawashiro, Rin Kaienbyo, Marisa Kirasame, Ramelia Scarlet, Patchouli Knowledge, Sakaya Izayoi, Flandre Scarlet, Yugi Hoshiguma, Chirno, Satari Kameji, Fujiwara no Moku, Nue Hoju, Hong Mei-ling, Yukari Yakumo, and Koakuma. All the character designs are consistent and clean. They're quite nice, but nothing really pops out to me like many of the other projects listed. Not that basic is bad, but most of them just feel like your average fanon interpretation of Zun's character designs. Still though, the animations showed how expressive Kloss was able to make the characters when actually animating them. Unfortunately, the animated character sheets video is also privated, so getting a good glimpse at any of these characters is now just a pipe dream. Even if I like some of the other creators' character designs better, Uraki's consistent well-drawn character designs are still a net positive. But that's where the stream of content ends because Studio Uraki has seemingly wiped Danmaku Animated's identity off of their portfolio entirely. As far as I know, aside from the concept of this anime, the project never got far enough to develop a plot. So I guess in that sense, it's kind of hard to be disappointed when we didn't know what we were missing out on. What we do know though is that it was meant to be based on a card game. This card game. Yes, I bought it. Danmaku is a hidden roll / battle deck card game. It was created by the Doujin Circle Mystery Parfait. The game involves shooting down other players within your range to complete a role-specific goal and win the game. Along with your role, you play as a character who has their own ability and spell card. You start with an attack range of 1, and everyone around the circle is +1 distance from you as you keep going. There are also item cards and incidents that shake up the game significantly. Although I haven't had the chance to tussle with 8 players, it's still really enjoyable with 5. In fact, my once reluctant friends now request to play it often. They describe it as Town of Salem meets Yu-Gi-Oh! And Flux, which probably isn't too far off. I may even make a video tackling the basic gist of the card game if that's of interest to anyone. For now, just know that Danmaku is incredibly fun, and having actual Gensokyo residents play it would have undoubtedly made for a hilarious anime. It's pretty devastating to see the potential for Danmaku animated go down the drain, even if Studio Uraki has done outstanding work on other projects. To ease the pain a bit, let me offer some insight from the investigative work I did on this particular project. Firstly, I emailed them. Since this was the only production made by English-speaking creators, I really wanted to take advantage of the opportunity to ask them personally about the project. So, on July 20th, early into this video script, I sent this email. Hello Studio Uraki. I hope this email finds you well. I am a small creator working under the alias Nyaanachi to create video essays on YouTube. My current project is a video discussing fan animation and anime revolving around Zun's Touhou Project. In my thorough research, I have stumbled upon an anime under your studio's production titled Danmaku Animated Series. This series seems to revolve around the Touhou cast playing Danmaku, a Touhou-themed board game. Card game, but I guess I didn't know that at the time. Unfortunately, it seems that all progress on this project has been halted since around 2017. Probably more like 2018, but we'll get to that in a bit. However, I cannot seem to find an official announcement from your studio in regards to the cancellation of this project. If you would be so kind as to answer a few questions of mine about this work, I would be very grateful. 1. Has the project officially been cancelled, or is it on indefinite hiatus? 2. Some of the videos about this project have been set to private on Studio Uraki's YouTube channel, e.g. the Bad Apple teaser, character sheet / teaser. Would it be possible to gain access to these for more data on the project? 3. If any of the studio staff have information on this project, would I be able to hear from them? I know this email is a long shot, and I will not be offended if I do not receive a response. I will assume the project has been cancelled if I am not told otherwise. Thank you for your time, Nyaanachi. Believe it or not, they actually never responded to this email. I know, right? Isn't it crazy that they wouldn't have the time to answer an email from someone who isn't inquiring about a commission? Seriously though, I wasn't expecting a reply, especially not after spelling the word cancelled wrong. Twice. I wasn't offended because I'm sure they're bombarded with emails every day and can only reply to the truly important ones. So it was back to the drawing board for me, aka stalking Uraki's Twitter and Reddit. What I found gave me just enough insight to understand that we're probably never getting this anime. First off, Edward Kloss was really enthusiastic about this production and the card game behind it. He played Danmaku at Anime-Expo 2018 and even retweeted an image of Mystery Parfait's booth. Secondly, and more importantly, the production that Kloss was enthusiastic about was not Danmaku animated, but rather the Bad Apple animation he had teased so many times. On December 23rd, 2017, the Bad Apple Fanimation teaser video was published to YouTube via the Studio Uraki YouTube channel. A couple of the Danmaku test animations and many character sheets were also created around or before this time. The Bad Apple animation was meant to be an animated video for a Bad Apple cover that Studio Uraki created. Not to be confused with the rock cover that they had already published, this would be a different version of Bad Apple with a completely original animation. Production on this project would likely have continued through September of 2018. The Reimu Box donation animation was posted in June, the Marisa Broom animation was posted in July, and the last piece of Touhou content from Kloss was this Cheerno art posted to Reddit on 9/9/2018 for Cheerno Day. We really don't know when this production stopped, but we do know that Touhou vibes were still in the air as of September. The last update for the Bad Apple animation was from Edward Kloss in a Reddit comment under his own Reimu donation box animation. The comment is from June 27, 2018 and reads, "Hey guys, due to recent events we had to delay the release of the Bad Apple Fanimation. I can assure you it will be released, but I cannot give an estimate as to when. The animation is done, a full whopping 3 minutes and 42 seconds, 24 frames a second. We are currently looking over to see if any changes must be made before post-production. Thank you all for the support and hope to see you at Anime-Expo." As we all know by now, this claim turned out to be false. Neither the Bad Apple Animation or Danmaku Animated ever graced the internet with their presence. I wish I had never found this comment though, as I will forever know that the pre-post-production Bad Apple Animation from Studio Uraki is officially lost media. But ultimately, this is my view on what happened. Edward Kloss was the catalyst behind any of the Touhou projects created by Studio Uraki. The Bad Apple Animation was worked on extensively, almost finished, but never went into post-production. As Studio Uraki quickly grew in 2018, they now faced a new challenge. Continue personal work that may have little financial advantage and payoff, or pursue work for other creators for more studio experience and profit. The Bad Apple Animation was put on hold to work on projects that yielded more advantage for the company at the time. Whether it was Kloss who made the decision or other studio staff is unknown, but based on the posts, it seems Kloss was the most enthusiastic about Touhou. Years later, as Touhou content remained on the channel, Uraki kept getting bombarded with questions on the old project, which was undeniably annoying. Instead of acknowledging the absence of the promised Bad Apple Animation and Danmaku Animated, they just silently privated videos relating to that content, thus alienating the very fanbase that initially gave them a well-needed audience. Whether this story is true or not doesn't matter. The point is that Danmaku Animated and its surrounding entities were not dealt with well by their studio. While I'm glad that Studio Uraki has seen success, it frustrates me to no end that the studio wasn't able to communicate properly with their fans, instead leaving them in the dark in what I see as an incredibly unprofessional manner. There were likely many more complications involving Uraki's Touhou animations, but it would be nice for once to have a concrete answer behind this anticipated Doujin project. For me, the coolest part of this whole experience is finding hidden gems from the Touhou community. As cool as full anime productions are, the Touhou Doujin animes only encompass a small section of the Touhou animation community. Thus, I would be doing a disservice to the Touhou community if I didn't at least acknowledge some notable animation mentions in this video. Before discussing the final Doujin anime production of the three, I will be dedicating this segment of the video to a personally curated list of animated honorable mentions. I dub it the Anime-esc lightning round, as many of these animations use an anime art style but are not full productions. This list will include many pics from the bottom section of u/Max DeFolsch's original Reddit post, as well as some findings of my own. However, I will not be limiting it to only productions in an anime style like the original post did. Most are music videos, but some are small animations as well. As to not drag this section on more than necessary, I will briefly explain each pic and tell you why I like it. Important general information will be shown on screen. Without further delay, let's get into some shenanigans. Starting off with likely my favorite animation on this list, Even the Endless Wind's Trajectory. Maybe I'm just a sucker for anything Sanai themed, but this particular music video is absolutely outstanding. Even the Endless Wind's Trajectory is a beautifully animated music video for a song of the same name that samples Sanai's original theme from Mountain of Faith. Faith is for the transient people. The video is like viewing Sanai's life through a looking glass, something that Kyoto Fantasy Troupe attempted as well. Even though Sanai is human, this animation really nails the idea that she has never been ordinary. She couldn't fit in with society, but found peace when she came to Gensokyo. Well, after getting pummeled by Reimu first, but you get what I mean. The music video is incredibly well produced with smooth animations, clean transitions, and genuinely some of the best choreography I've seen in any animated Touhou battle. Not to mention the godly vocals and instrumentals in the song. On a side note, Shoujo Fractal Group, the circle behind this project, also made one for Yu Yu Co as well, called Wandering Darkness. I really only wanted to talk about one of these two, but Wandering Darkness also has the same level of production. Seriously though, I would kill for an entire anime just based on Sanai's character arc at this point. Even the Endless Wind's Trajectory is more than worth your time to check out. Next up is the closest thing to an anime production on this list. An animation that goes by the title, Explosion of Patchouli. This 12-minute video is a comedic short animation based on a pre-existing doujinshi. The plot centralizes on a mistake that Sakuya made by telling Flandre that the sun is an enemy of vampires. Flandre spends the entire video destroying the sun multiple times, all while Patchouli keeps draining her magic to replace it. Eventually, Flan catches on when the moon's light is missing from the sky due to a fake sun, and I won't spoil the rest, but it's in the title. The animation is super cute, and the voice acting is executed quite well. Comedic timing is impeccable in this production as well.
ロイヤルベッドに寝ながら ロイヤルミルクティーでも飲めばいいでしょ。送り迎えはクラウンのロイヤルでも出すわ。
The art is very amateur, but everything is animated, no lack of in-betweens here. While I like the character designs, they sometimes, for whatever reason, remind me of King of the Hill? Yeah, don't ask me why, but that's a crossover we definitely need. If more anime doujins are what you crave, this small one acts as a decent OVA of sorts. Anyways, back to music videos. This next one is called Chen's Gensokyo and is more of a dance than a music video. It's just a cute video of Chen dancing to some sort of Gensokyo march. The rest of Gensokyo joins in on the dance, and it's just too adorable to pass up. The animation isn't earth-shattering, but I mean, come on, it's not meant to be. Just the fact that Mima showed up is proof that we all need to learn Chen's march. While I wish I knew the song's name, I unfortunately don't. However, there seem to be kakegoe chants strewn throughout like in traditional Japanese folk music, so I find that neat. The animators responsible are the now defunct circle Touhou Anime Kinemakan, which might be Cinemacon, but it's spelled with a K, so I don't honestly know how to pronounce it. They have some other very well done animations, like multiple of their Touhou Anime motion picture videos, but I just have a soft spot for this one. I don't know, maybe I'm a late blooming Chen fan or something. The next choice was a tough one for me because I couldn't decide on a particular video to talk about. I mentioned before that Soundholic has made many animated music videos, but my favorite of them is likely this one. Prière is a music video depicting events that seem to have happened before Ramelia and her sister took over the Scarlet Devil Manor. It's pretty dark, depicting the slaughter of the entire mansion. Although there's little animation, the raw emotion from the characters is pretty intense. The Scarlet Sisters are labeled as outcasts and left to fend for themselves. It's a different lighting to their character rather than just evil vampire girls. The song syncs perfectly with the video as well. Nana Takahashi does a brilliant job on vocals, making for an altogether intense performance. There are other more animation-heavy Soundholic videos to check out, like Grip and Breakdown and All Mankind's Hiso Tensoku, but I don't know. This one just strikes an emotional chord that the others don't. Sticking with the theme of Touhou 6, here's a work that I find particularly impressive. A good while ago, an independent creator had made a Touhou embodiment of Scarlet Devil opening. Although it seems to be unfinished, the animation at its core is not. There are no backgrounds, but the characters are fully animated and colored. Still though, the animation is way too fluid for what it is. At first I couldn't figure out what this video was, but after following a couple of links, I found a comparison video. Turns out, the creator traced the whole damn thing. Every single shot from this opening is stolen from other anime and reworked for the Touhou characters featured. They blatantly say it in the description of the original video though, so it isn't like they're claiming it as their own. Even so, it takes a lot of talent to trace animation this well, and to adapt it to new characters. Which is why it kinda sucks that this creator never tried their hand at an original animation, or at least finally drawing the background. I can't pinpoint the song that plays in this opening, but it is, as the kids say, a banger. I think I made that joke already. Even though the animation isn't original, I'd still recommend this opening for a gander. Moving away from music videos, we have a short animation done by a familiar doujin circle. Dream of the Secret Deep World is an animation of a fight between Sumireko and other various yokai. This work was done by Kyoto Fantasy Troupe, the very same circle that did the sealed Esoteric History. Needless to say, the production on this one separates itself from the rest of the pack. It actually makes me a bit disappointed that the sealed Esoteric History doesn't have as much action. The fights are very well choreographed, with each character's attack leading into the next. I didn't really know much about Sumireko until researching this video, so it definitely came as a shock to me that she seemingly holds a candle to these powerful yokai. Her psychokinesis is displayed accurately to lore as she's seen teleporting around. It isn't a long fight, but it's a nice animation for what it is. Kyoto Fantasy Troupe has done some other animations too, like the Phantasmagoria flower viewing PV, so there's a lot more to look at if you're interested in their work. This next selection takes the cake for the darkest on this list. It's also from a creator that has much overlap with the Touhou community. Well, the original work is at least. Long ago, before Girls' Last Tour, TK Miz wrote a doujin manga called Flan Wants to Die. Sometime last year, an independent creator adapted that very doujin into an animation. The work is incredibly dark, as it follows a very depressed Flandre who constantly makes devastating mistakes. Although a tad less detailed, the animation does a great job replicating the original tone and art style of the manga. It also uses songs from the Girls' Last Tour soundtrack to really embody a somber feeling throughout. I found it neat to discover that TK Miz was writing the same types of themes into their stories far before writing original work. I can't spoil much, but Flan Wants to Die is well worth a watch for those who like both Touhou and TK Miz, which, unsurprisingly, should be a lot of you. The original doujin is also worth a read. Last but not least, I want to end this section off with another recent work. Touhou Red Mist Episode 1 is an animation based off of Touhou 6 embodiment of Scarlet Devil. This animation was created by a YouTuber named RussMars2, and is the very first part in what is likely to be a series of videos. It currently only reimagines the story up until Chiono's appearance in Stage 2. While the art style isn't necessarily anime, the animation comes the closest I've seen to replicating Zun's original Touhou drawings. I also particularly like the usage of different brushes in the animation, like this one that's similar to a crayon. Since this is a reimagining, the characters are just downright ridiculous with jokes and references flying everywhere. But unlike some other works, the jokes actually land really well.
I didn't know you meant that, Red Mist.
Look, we gotta get to the bottom of this.
Fine, let me just get my gun. What? It's called a bullet hell after all.
My favorite parts are the nods to how absurd some of Zun's original character poses are. Like Rumia perpetually stuck in a T-pose and Reimu sitting down exactly how she does on the title screen of the game. The more I watch this one, the more I get genuine giggles out of particular scenes. Unlike a lot of other animations on this list, this one actually has voice acting as well. The English voices are pretty good for amateurs, and they get better as the video continues. Red Mist is a treat to watch if you're looking for more comedic Touhou animations, and I'm looking forward to an episode 2 sometime in the future. I couldn't include everything I watched on this list, but I did make a playlist of most of my favorite doujins that I'll leave down in the description. Even though large-scale anime productions are the core of this video, it's important to remember that the smaller ones can be just as chock full of talent. I hope you'll consider checking out the videos featured on this list, and many others that I didn't have the chance to put the spotlight on. Now for what everyone has been waiting for. It's time to talk about A Summer Day's Dream. So here we are at the last of the 3 fully released doujin anime productions. While it was my intention to cover this one last, it wasn't intentional for me to cover all 3 in order of my personal ranking. By now though, I'm sure you figured out that this was my favorite via process of elimination. And you'd be right. Maikaze's A Summer Day's Dream is probably the least talked about of the productions here, yet it's pretty iconic as far as Touhou doujin anime goes. That's because it's the oldest anime here, but has taken its sweet time releasing over the years. Before I divulge into why this work is my favorite, let me explain A Summer Day's Dream's history and what the anime is all about. Musou Kakyo A Summer Day's Dream is the first Touhou anime doujin to release an episode. At some point before Comic Het 75 in 2008, an independent creator known as Tokine announced an anime known as Touhou Anime Project. The project was chock full of a star-studded cast and planned for release at Comic Het 75. However, the project caught the attention of Zun, who posted on his blog that he was fearful that people would mistake the project as official because of its impressive voice cast and current name mistakenly leading to affiliation. After Zun's concerns were taken into consideration, the anime garnered the name A Summer Day's Dream and officially released at Comic Het 75 on December 29, 2008. The studio credited for the work is known as Maikaze, but much like Team Shanghai Alice, it is only led by one person, that being Tokine themselves. And something I thought was interesting is that on Maikaze's website there's a note on the front page that says Musou Kakyo Episode 1 was originally a college graduation work. Which makes me even more curious as to how they got the voice actors they did for this work if they weren't even in the industry. Episode 1's release was also peculiar because it had English subtitles included on the disc. Like, I know that there were Western Touhou fans in 2008, but it's definitely a long shot to assume that any of them would get their hands on one of these DVDs.
Touhou Project.
Western Touhou fan Kirby M was credited as the proofreader for said subtitles, who is a rabbit hole in and of themselves. For a while, they ran the website Walfas, these little Touhou flash thingies, and also went by the name Walfas on Twitter. If the art style of Walfas looks similar to you and the name Walfas seems similar to Walfie, you'd be onto something. That's right, Wolfie, the creator of Small Ame and other small VTubers, is indeed the very same Wolfas who made these Touhou Flash projects and proofread the subtitles for A Summer Day's Dream. It's pretty neat that this all comes full circle as my Small Ame and Guro plushies sit so close to my Fumos in the living room. Anyways, without further sidetracking, let's get back to A Summer Day's Dream. While the initial release had bizarre features to it like English subs that no one was going to see, it held a lot of promise for the time period. So when did episode 2 come out? 4 years later on August 11th, 2012. So let's just say the release schedule was a lot more sporadic than Nyaanachi's video upload schedule. But none of this should have been surprising to anyone who dug deep enough into Maikaze. A one-man project without any outside help for animating, drawing, composing, and coaching voice actors kind of actually makes 4 years seem like it was way too fast. While initially planned for 3 episodes, the production ended up being 4.5. Episode 2.5 released on May 11th, 2014, Episode 3 released on August 13th, 2016, and Episode 4 released on October 24th, 2021. 13 years and potentially more have progressed since the start of the anime, so it isn't surprising to me that the other 2 Doujin anime are more talked about. I have to once again remind you that 4 20-minute productions and 1 11-minute production all done by one man in 13 years is actually pretty impressive, especially considering the type of quality we got. So what is A Summer Day's Dream all about, and how does it stack up to the other anime doujins? Musou Kakyo A Summer Day's Dream is a completely original story with small ties to the plot of Immaterial and Missing Power. The story is a mystery plot that initially starts at the Hakurei Shrine. As Reimu and Suika are preparing for the annual summer banquet held at Hakurei Shrine, Reimu notices that her donation box is missing. After Aya and Marisa join her, she cancels the banquet and heads to the Scarlet Devil Mansion to investigate the incident. As the episodes progress, other characters seem to have mysterious circumstances surrounding objects of theirs. Sakuya runs out of tea even though her supply was just full, Yomu's food for the banquet is missing and it wasn't all because of Yuyuko's appetite, and Patchouli can't find an important book of hers. The anime includes characters present up through Immaterial and Missing Power, although mostly only through Imperishable Night. Each group from the first 3 games has their own dedicated scenes and interactions. The most notable by far, though, would be the watermelon fight between Yomu and Raisin. Teui steals Yomu's watermelon that was chilling in the river and hands it off to Raisin after Yomu chases her down. Raisin and Yomu then fight over possession of the watermelon. Aside from interactions like these, the story mainly focuses on Reimu, Marisa, Alice, Patchouli, and some of the other Scarlet Devil cast. The mystery plays out pretty well, with questions building up through episode 3 until the big reveal at the end of the episode. Then episode 4 has a big fight and somewhat of a conclusion. The end of episode 4 kind of teases a potential episode 5, but it's very vague and unclear. I can't dig into the episodes too much like I could with the sealed Esoteric history, because the plot matters enough here that the story is less enjoyable if I spoil it for you. I can tell you though that character interactions really shine in this production, and that's what makes up most of the episodes. The quality of the episodes varies based on when they were produced, with episode 1 obviously looking the most amateur. It is neat though to see how Tokine's art progresses throughout the show's lifespan. However, I'd say that the amateur look pretty much boils down to character designs, as this anime has the least polish in that department. Environments are very well developed, and it still feels more like an anime than a small animation. That being said, the character designs are really only funky for 1 episode, that being the first. I happen to love the non-traditional, cute, almost moe character designs in this production. Every one of them looks extremely huggable, and while I love it, I don't know if that's a good trait for deadly yokai to have. Regardless, the art doesn't have the level of polish that the other 2 doujins offer, but it does exceed the other 2 in some aspects. Animation may be one of those, as Maikaze clearly knows how to make movement look nice. The fights may not look as polished as some of the earlier ones from Memories of Phantasm, but they are consistently better choreographed. Patchouli vs Reimu and Raisin vs Yomu aren't the flashiest, but the animation is still a joy to look at. I will take well-choreographed fights over flashy ones any day of the week. What makes the animation far most enjoyable though is the way Maikaze works with the characters. The personality of each character is really brought out in body movement and facial expressions. This makes fights less of a main focus. You instead get well-written, often humorous interactions between characters. These interactions aren't fueled by fanon content either. Once again, personality is a mix of fanon and canon, but Maikaze makes the fanon very subtle with only a few traits or nods, i.e. Yuyuko's appetite and Kaguya being a Hikikomori Danmaku player. This anime probably has the best balance between canon and fanon character counterparts, which makes it a lot more digestible if you can't stand the fanon character interpretations. Speaking of characters, it would be irresponsible of me if I didn't mention the voice cast behind the characters. Much like the sealed Esoteric history, A Summer Day's Dream has quite the prolific voice cast. although I'd argue that this high-profile voice cast is even better than the previously mentioned one. What sets A Summer Day's Dream apart is likely the way that the talents were worked with and the quality of the script itself. Part of the voice cast includes Mai Nakahara as Reimu Hakure and Miyuki Sawashiro as Marisa Kirisame.
ほら、いたでしょ？隙間の妖怪が。あれに相談してみるとか。
ゆかり？なあ、ゆかりはダメダメ。相談しようと思ったんだけど、あいつ向こうから用事がないと現れないし。ま、いつものことだから寝てるんだろうけど。
この重要な時に。
あ、アリス！ What？ そう。おい、アリス、しっかりしろ。死んだのか？死んだんだな。あ。
ちみちみってもらなのよ。
No one really knows how Maikaze got a hold of these voice actors, whether they have some sort of backdoor into the industry, if they paid an extensive amount out of pocket, or if many voice actors are just huge Touhou fans. You know, at this point, I'm really willing to believe that last one is the truth. Regardless, if not anything else, the seiyus alone make this anime well worth watching. The polish isn't just in the voices, but in the inflections and tones that are used appropriately in each scene. I'm willing to bet that Maikaze worked extensively to make sure the script was adapted in the right ways, which clearly paid off in the end. As for the rest of the sound design, it isn't too bad. From the looks of it, the soundtrack was done by Maikaze as well. Outside of this Doujin anime, Maikaze actually mainly works on Doujin music, so it should be no surprise that the soundtrack is good. Nothing stuck out to me like in the sealed Esoteric history, but the music does fit the tone of scenes well when it's used.
パチュリ様？昨夜？どうかなされましたか？え？どうかって、だって今、誰かが来て急に。誰か。ここにはさっきから。
I say when it's used because there are far more moments in A Summer Day's Dream where music just isn't used, which I actually kind of like. I know I pack my videos full of background music, but when it comes to anime, sometimes you need that silence. Finding the right scenes to fill the void is necessary, but finding the right scenes to leave quiet is also important too. Maikaze does a good job of not going overboard with the music, which is something that can't be said of a lot of commercial modern anime. Overall, the animation is good, the art is fine but a little sloppy, the sound design is good, and the voice acting is phenomenal. So why is A Summer Day's Dream my favorite if it isn't outstanding? I think it's because, out of the three, this anime feels the most like an original piece. Maikaze takes a different approach from Manpaku Jinja and Kyoto Fantasy Troupe in that they decided to make something completely original. They were also bold enough to leave pandering out of their production to produce something that had a story of quality. To discuss what I mean a little bit more, let's start with the story. Maikaze developed a completely original incident for Reimu and Marisa to fix. By doing so, they weren't bound by the limits of how events in the video games played out. They were also allowed to give Marisa and Reimu vastly different paths, yet focus on both of them in the story. Most importantly though, they include other characters for the purpose of driving the central plot rather than just squeezing them in frame. Over the years, as more Touhou games were released, Maikaze didn't feel the need to alter the story in order to show extra characters just to pander to an audience. Because of this, they could focus on characters from select Touhou entries, adapt their character for the anime, and really make Gensokyo feel lively. It's just refreshing to have an anime doujin that feels like its own entry, rather than an attempt to recreate the energy of the games or the fandom. While the story isn't groundbreaking, it has a reveal that is built up to very well, and a natural progression that's hard to find in other doujins. The story itself may not be worth gushing about, but the way the script is written definitely is. This is the only one of the three doujin productions that had me genuinely laughing out loud during some sections. Jokes flow naturally from the personality and actions of each character, rather than feeling forced by some running gag created by the fandom. The voice actors provide further enjoyment with their delivery of said jokes. The timing and inflection is always just right. Miyuki Sawashiro is by far my favorite performance. I feel like her voice is as close to a perfect fit for Marisa as you can get. Her scenes, especially the ones with Alice in them, are some of my favorites. Between the script, the voice acting, and the story, I just feel that this anime flows the best out of the three. Aside from that, I have a lot more personal love for this production than the others. I know I said the character designs were funky, but it was really only for the first episode. I adore the cute style that Maikaze used, and they feel more unique than the other two doujins that use more traditional anime styles. The fight with Yomu and Raisin serves nearly no purpose story-wise, but I love it nonetheless. Then there's the ending, which may not actually be the ending. The quote-unquote cliffhanger sort of gets resolved after the credits. Still though, there are many loose ends that would benefit from being tied up, so a 5th episode may still surface. I genuinely wouldn't be upset if it doesn't though. From my perspective, A Summer Day's Dream doesn't need an ending more than the one it already got. Sort of like how Madoka Rebellion doesn't need a sequel, but a sequel could also enhance the trilogy. But that's an entirely different can of worms that I'm unwilling to open. All in all, I just like this particular production the best. It all boils down to personal preference, but from my perspective, A Summer Day's Dream is a must-watch for Touhou fans. There's a lot to love about this production, and the voice acting alone should be convincing enough. It also isn't a terrible entry point for Touhou either, since it's original content. Outsiders would really only struggle to understand who the characters are, but they would still be able to follow the story. Regardless of whether Maikaze ends up producing a 5th episode or not, I hope they continue to make Touhou doujins. The talent required to produce something like A Summer Day's Dream is pretty damn astonishing, and it'd be a shame to see that talent disappear. Anime is a comfort area in my life, as it is for many other people's lives as well. It has always served as a device to take my brain to unimaginable places, leaving my current struggles behind for just a moment. But as I continue to create content about it on this channel, I've begun to reimagine my understanding of the medium. And now, within the Touhou fandom, I have found something that I never knew existed. Anime studios have been pumping out impressive projects since before I was born, some seen only by a handful and others that have been experienced all around the world. And while that's cool and all, apparently mainstream anime productions are just the tip of the iceberg, for underneath lies a microcosm of niche fan animations and entirely independent anime productions. However, unsurprisingly, Touhou is on the extreme end of that spectrum. Fan animations exist for all kinds of fandoms, including many popular anime, but no fanbase has taken it nearly as far as the Touhou fandom. While the idea for this video kicked off from my curiosity surrounding these anime projects, it ultimately led to me becoming increasingly curious about the fandom itself, rather than just the projects, leading to me understanding even less about this community than I did in the start. Thanks! I'm still questioning whether Touhou fans are crazy or just really determined, but we may be a mixture of both, to be honest. Crazy enough to generate an idea like creating a full-scale anime production or making an excessively long video essay discussing them, and just determined enough to fully follow through with that crazy idea. Learning not only about these doujin productions, but also the life behind these productions has caused me to develop a larger appreciation for Touhou and its fandom, and I hope it has for you as well. Whether you're an onlooker enjoying what others create, or you're an active artist, game developer, animator, musician, or content creator that's willing to dedicate a bit of their time for a small payoff, you're still part of the community. And as a part of the community, it's our sole responsibility to keep reminding outsiders that Touhou is indeed not an anime. And we should be happy about that. Memories of Phantasm, The Sealed Esoteric History, and A Summer Day's Dream. These projects not only represent impressive creativity from the Touhou fandom, but they also show perseverance despite Zun's reluctance to participate in the animation medium. No, Touhou isn't an anime, and despite these outstanding attempts from the community to make it one, none of these shows are good replacements for the games. And I don't think a Touhou anime would ever be a replacement for the games. We shouldn't be upset that Zun will never have the desire to create an official Touhou anime. We should instead revel in the fact that there are individuals out there talented enough to leave their own creative imprint on an already excellent product, taking liberties to reimagine Touhou as we know it, rather than adapting it into an anime format. While none of the Touhou anime projects are great introductions to Touhou, they're fantastic supplemental works in their respective ways. Something that may not have been the case if any of them were commercial productions. Is it disappointing that a big studio budget and team has never been given to the Touhou project? Yes, it is, and I think many of us would love to see an official Touhou anime. But it's probably best to leave the heavy lifting to the fans. After all, if they have the gall to overcorrect me on which character theme I'm whistling while I unbox my Fumo, they're certainly prolific enough to make marvelous anime projects of their own. Everyone got so pissy about me humming the wrong tune last time, I figured I'd just double down and do it again. Hey, if you made it this far, you either skipped to the end, or actually endured this slog of a video for over an hour. Or 2. I haven't edited the audio yet, so it might be 2. Either way, I'll still devour that view of yours into the counter in the bottom left, because I need that rush of dopamine that it provides. Thanks for watching. Something you may have noticed is that I hadn't mentioned where to watch any of these works. That's because most of them are already up on YouTube in some capacity or another. Maikaze and a few others do personally sell the works, but even if I'd like to support these artists, it's hard doing so in the US. In regards to information on sections of this video, I'll be leaving a few links in the video description. Mainly, the link to the Reddit post that sparked my interest in anime doujins, links that I used in my research of each video segment, and of course a playlist of some of my favorite smaller doujin animations. While research and writing took an exceedingly long time for this video, I enjoyed making it quite a bit. A special thanks to Reddit user u/maxdefolsch for inspiring me to dig into every Touhou Anime Doujin work I could find. And once again, I'd like to thank you, the fans, for putting up with me. Seriously, I wouldn't still be making videos if it weren't for you. All I ask is that you death bomb the hell out of that like button so YouTube will push this video to every living, breathing life form that enjoys anything put out by Team Shanghai Alice, which I know is a lot of you! Now, if you excuse me, I'm going to go write my next video on a more simple topic, like the Promised Neverland or something.